That's definitely right. And I think it's that. Ooh. So last week, I did see that they made an official announcement in regard to the upcoming Legend of Zelda live action movie. Um, the Zelda dude Miyamoto came out and announced that they have officially cast both Link and Zelda for the upcoming movie. And that was kind of my first exposure to the film, other than like the fact that I heard, oh, they're gonna do a Zelda movie. And I was like, oh, that's ambitious. So I see the post and I see the pictures of the young lady and the young man that they've cast for the roles, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know. I've never heard of them. I think that's good that they're going with some unknown actors. I think that's generally a really good way to go. And I haven't seen Bella Ramsey's name attached to it yet. But they're still looking for a Ganondorf. There's still time.
I'm gonna be a dad.
Anyways, so I see these pictures and I'm like, oh yeah. They look fine. And then I closed the page and I was like, okay, I'm out. And then I saw yesterday that a lot of people, the good people of the internet, they have not let us down. They have found something to complain about, which we've become very adept at doing. Now, look, I get it. You know, people get things dead set in their brains where they're like, I have to have it this way. And they're disappointed. I don't really understand the need to bring in the identity politics into like literally everything, every single thing. Like, we can't even just have a Zelda movie without some sort of identity politics controversy coming into play. And so I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it and I'm like, let's just be real about it. When this movie comes out, and let's say we're a few months past its opening weekend, if, I'm not saying there will be, but if there are problems with the movie and you have a huge portion of the Zelda fan base and they're upset, I would bet dollars to donuts that they're not upset over the person cast to play Zelda. And the reason I say that is because I just think doing a Legend of Zelda live action movie is really tricky. It's going to be really, really tricky to pull this off in a way that, let's just call it, pleases the majority of the fan base, right? I'm including like dedicated Zelda fans, like myself, who have been around since, the Ocarina of Time days. And then you're going to have a whole swath of people who are not like Zelda fans, or they're not people that are familiar with the games, and they're just going to go and be like, oh, I'm going to take my 10-year-old kids to go see the Zelda movie this weekend. And that's fine. But that brings me to the big tricky thing number one, and that is the tone. If you're making a live action Zelda film, what is the tone that you're aiming for? And before we even get into that, like, what is your demographic? Who are you aiming and trying to target with the live action Zelda movie? Is it, I'm 34? Are you trying to get people like me who have been Zelda fans for a long time? So now you're catering to an older audience, or are you trying to go closer to something like the Mario movie, which is a recent film that I think does a really good job of capturing, like, this is what a Mario movie should be. And it did a good job of, I think, riding the fence of being a fun movie for like kids to enjoy, and then also packing in enough references and Easter eggs and things that are going to engage your older fan base, people that are like, yeah, I've been playing video games since day one of Mario. And so what is that target audience for the Zelda movie? That's going to dictate a lot. My assumption is they're going to try to just cast the widest net that they can go, and they're going to end up probably playing it pretty safe in terms of the tone. I think it's going to, maybe to its detriment, feature a little bit too much humor. That was kind of my problem with like the Fallout show, which I thought started off pretty strong, and then I just steadily kept losing interest in the Fallout show after each episode. I think a big reason for that was they just leaned a little too far into like the goofy humor. And when that is working in the first few episodes, you're invested, it keeps you engaged. But after a few episodes of that, the charm starts to wear off, and then you realize, okay, well, that's kind of like all the show had going for it, was the fun humor and getting to see everything from the games kind of brought to life, right? Where you're like, oh, look, there's the Pit Boy and there's the vault suits. And again, things like that are very surface level, that once that charm is worn off, you're going to slowly just lose interest in it, because you're like, okay, so now what do we have left here? We just have a fairly generic story that, again, just isn't entirely that interesting to watch. So with the Zelda film, it's like, what are you going to do? What is that tone? And that brings me to the question of, what is your visual style? How are you going to define that in a Zelda movie? Is it going to be bright? Is it going to be fantastical and very fun, playful? Or is it going to be more grounded and gritty, and they're going to try to take it a little bit serious, where it's like, okay, I think, by the way, that would be a mistake. I think you kind of have to play into the silliness of the Zelda world. Like, you have things like like the little Deku guys, you have and again, we'll get into like the plot in terms of like, what are they going to cover, a specific game, or is it just going to be a big catch-all? Here's a Zelda story. Link has to go rescue the princess from Ganondorf. But the games are very cartoony. And so I think to do a successful adaptation, it needs to bring in that goofiness. But I think there's a line that you can ride where it's like, it's not too goofy to where you're going to alienate. Like, I think someone like me, like, I would watch it if it was kind of goofy and silly and fun. I'm going to watch it either way, just because I want to see what a live action Zelda looks like. I think there's tons of people who have been waiting a long time to see a decently made live action Zelda film. So I'll watch it, but will I love it? Is it something that I'm going to get 45 minutes into the movie and be like, okay, it's not that great, it's not that fun? But I think if you interject enough grounded and enough grittiness, it can be interesting. I think the direction they choose to go in with special effects is going to be really huge. So I recently was watching, earlier today, I was watching Labyrinth, right? Because I'm trying to picture, if I'm making a Zelda live action movie in 2025, what am I going to do to just have this movie feel special, have it feel like it's set apart from everything else that comes out these days? And I'm watching Labyrinth, and I'm looking at all of their like, it's all practical effects. Other than like, there's like a weird bird sequence in the beginning of the movie where the bird is like CGI and it looks like really, really fucking bad. Um, but all of like the weird monsters and the little goblins and there's like the dwarf character. It's all practical effects. It's all people with like prosthetics and makeup and puppetry. And the more I watched it, the more I'm like, yeah, man. I think if I was doing a live action Zelda film, I'm gonna dig into that practical effects bag as often as I possibly can. Um, because the alternative is it's just gonna be this giant green screen fest where you're gonna have these two performers that they cast for Link and Zelda. They're gonna be doing like 95% of the shoot on a soundstage surrounded by green screen. And the movie's gonna just come out and it's gonna have this charmless, generic, boring feel to it. And these are all things that play back into tone and what that style is and how they're gonna try to portray this world. The second big problem I think that the movie has is the Link problem. You have an iconic, beloved protagonist who doesn't speak at all in the games. He is mute by all accounts. And I'm sure they had the discussion. There's probably a bunch of dudes in a boardroom, writers, executives, and they're sitting there. And I bet you they entertained the thought for a moment where they were like, okay, well, what if we just don't really have Link talk? And there's been some movies where the protagonist is like, I think of like Ryan Gosling in Drive. Doesn't have a ton of dialogue. I think Tom Hardy in the Mad Max movie, I don't remember him having a ton of dialogue either, and it worked. But those are different movies, man. That's a different audience. That's a different vibe. I don't know if that's going to play here. So they're going to have Link speak, would be my guess. And I think the big problem with that is the moment, it doesn't matter who's playing him. Except for if it was like Bella Ramsey, it would be bad. Whoever it is, I think the moment that they open their mouths and they start speaking, the character in this movie just instantly turns into your generic adventure action movie protagonist. Where you're like, it just doesn't like feel like Link. I think that's going to be a big problem that they run into. That people are going to, even if they do it well, people are going to complain about this movie. It's just how everything is. We love to complain and we love to shit on stuff. Even things that are just arbitrarily like pretty good. You know, it's fine. I think this movie could turn out to be just totally fine. But it'd be really cool if it was awesome. The next big thing. I'm not saying it's going to be the Lord of the Rings trilogy or anything like that, but it could at least maybe be the Hobbit series, which was entertaining to some degree. It was fun to watch. You can't help but sit and compare it to Lord of the Rings, and you're like, okay, this is not Lord of the Rings. But there's probably a lot you could take out of those Hobbit movies in terms of it's a lot more CGI than the Lord of the Rings trilogy was, but they did still rock a few practical effects in those Hobbit movies, and I think that type of visual style and tone where the Hobbit was definitely a little more whimsical, a little more on the goofy in comparison to Lord of the Rings. I think something like the Hobbit movies is what they're going to end up doing. You get that nice soft PG-13. It caters to a younger audience. It's going to try to scratch the itch for people of my generation and even older Nintendo fans, people who've been playing these games forever. That's what I ultimately think they're going to end up doing. But that's it. I think it's the Link problem is a big one. I think that nailing the tone is going to be an issue as well. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on real quick is I'm curious to see what they do in terms of a narrative, whether they directly adapt a specific game or if they're just going to go the Mario movie route where it's like, hey, we all kind of understand the formula for what makes a Zelda game. You have Link, he's going to have to go through dungeons and collect specific items that allow him to do the next thing. Also that he can rescue the princess from Ganondorf. That's by and large the formula for the games. So I would expect that from the movie, obviously. And if you're going to do that, then yeah, you wouldn't need to follow a specific game. Instead, what you could do is you make a pretty generic Zelda storyline and you just kind of grab different ingredients from the different games and you can go, oh, remember this? Bring that in. And then, oh, there's a kid that Link meets along the way and the kid uses a glider. And everyone's like, oh, it's like Breath of the Wild. That's probably what I think they're going to do. They're going to go like, let's just make a generic catch-all Zelda movie so we can bring in elements of all the games. And again, that's probably the best way to please everybody, because you couldn't go in and do Breath of the Wild, because Breath of the Wild, in my opinion, is just too vague and too undefined of a story to really build that out and do a narrative. I think if you're going to do a game, Ocarina of Time is maybe the best bet. I'm not sure. I have not played every Zelda game, particularly older ones, but I think that Ocarina of Time does a really good job of establishing like enough lore about the Kingdom of Hyrule. It does a nice job of at least fleshing out who Ganondorf is, where he comes from, how he rises to power. I think that the theme of time and of aging and of growing with the Temple of Time, and you see part of the game he's a kid, Link is a kid, and then the second half you become an adult, or he's like, I don't know, he's like a late teenager. But I don't think they've announced the casting of multiple actors for Link. So I think they're just going with a generic, like, he's 15 throughout the whole movie type of deal. But I'll be curious to see which story they end up going with. And then the bigger thing is the music. Music is such a quintessential part of these games. And it's like, okay, if you don't adapt a specific game like Ocarina of Time, it's like, okay, whoever you bring in to do the score, just do your interpretation of all this great shit that already exists. Make it cinematic. It's going to be more like, you know, orchestral, bring in the strings. But if you do the generic route, it's like, okay, you can hit some of the major themes. Like you're going to get Zelda's Lullaby. You're going to get Epona and the Epona song for sure. But then your composer has a bit more leeway in terms of like, hey, we're going to need a good amount of original work here. And you're just going to have to listen to a bunch of the game soundtracks, try to absorb that, and then poop out, you know, your interpretation of Zelda music. I just hope they don't do like, you could grab a bunch of like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, where it's just like little plinky piano patterns. But it's more like of an ambient sound than actual like melody based music. But we'll see. But I think, yeah, like I said, man, I think that the Zelda movie is challenging. I think it's tough. It's harder than Super Mario because you just that risk of becoming here's just another generic, like crappy action adventure movie, high fantasy film that's just, it just doesn't feel unique. It doesn't have any charm or character to it. So we'll see. But again, I think when this movie comes out, if people have problems, I have a really hard time imagining that those problems are focused on the person they cast to play Zelda. So if you're upset and you're angry about it, hopefully this video helps to ease your frustrations. It's gonna be okay. At the very least, we get to watch a live action Zelda movie. So it'll be fun. Will it be fun for the whole time? We shall see. Anyways, thank you all for watching. I will catch you next time. Peace.